Medicine,
Law, friendship. This is Dr. Long and Lawyer Nik. You're listening to the Medico-Legal Brief.
one doctor, one lawyer, and a whole lot of gray area.
So, Nick, why don't you introduce yourself and give us a little backstory how you ended up where you are and became Mr. Big Attorney?
So, yeah, I mean, obviously, we've been friends for a while. We go back to high school and then even weirdly before that to
Before.
middle school and intermediate school, and both lived in Chicago.
Yep.
But yeah, we're sitting here. I'm the lawyer, Long is the doctor. I've been out of law school for, gosh, almost a decade now. So 11 years. And yeah, I had a pretty crazy path in my career. So, we both started at Texas after
UT,
that.
University of Texas in Austin.
University of Texas. Yes. Thank you for the connection. So we're both Longhorns through and
Yep.
through. And then I came back so we're both, kind of from Texas. We were both born in Chicago, ended up in Texas in the DFW area. And so I came back from Austin and I headed to Texas Wesleyan University in downtown Fort Worth.
Mm-hmm.
And then most of you may look and say, hey, there is no Texas Wesleyan School of Law. Well, that's because Texas A&M bought the law school while I was there.
That
So,
was a big deal within the friend group when you
oh
converted.
my gosh. Guys, it was incredible because essentially I became an Aggie overnight. And when you grow up as a Longhorn and
Oh
then you
yeah.
become an Aggie, it's like a cardinal sin.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, and then, most of you may know that law school is 3 years. So I did 3 years in law school, did a bunch of internships that we'll get into, came out and had a variety of different jobs as I kind of try to find my path. So that's kind
But
of the bullet point spark notes on where I come from. So
yeah. But you also did college in a shorter period than I think most people do, which is
yeah.
4 years. You did it in three.
No,
What
three and a
was
half.
3.5? What
You
was
guys
your,
graduated
why
in
did you do that? I mean, I think I remember why you chose to do it that early, but yeah, why did you decide to graduate sooner than the rest of us?
Well, I think the thought process there was I have 3 more years of law school after college. So I thought if I graduated early, I'd save money. I would be able to come back home and get prepared for law school. If I could do it all over again, though, I would have stayed that last semester. I would have hung out with you guys, hung out with my best
Yeah,
friends, continued to go to, Longhorn sporting events, run
yeah,
around
oh
campus.
yeah.
Instead, I worked for a retail company and I was in loss prevention. So in the 8 months before or when I graduated up until law school, I went around and caught shoplifters at
No,
a big old department store, which is pretty fun. And that'll
yeah.
kind of go into my story about why I went to law school and everything I was trying to pursue there. But yeah, I came back to Fort Worth and all my friends were still in Austin and all I
Hmm.
got were Facebook notifications of all the fun you were having, and
No, yeah.
to get back as much as possible to see you guys. But I mean, yeah, it was still a good decision. If I could give the advice to anybody thinking about graduating early, I would tell them don't do it. Try to get in the 4 years, sometimes maybe even five if you can, because I think looking back, college was one of the best times, and I would say that I personally did some of the most growing I've ever done while in
Mhm.
college. I know that the
True.
classes and all that are kind of iffy, but like becoming an adult was super important during that
Yeah,
time.
social growth, right? I feel like even for me, I mean, when we first met, I was a big introvert, and you kind of pulled me out of my shell, and college group
Mhm.
pulled me out of my shell. So definitely like big growth phase. But I did the opposite of you. I actually did 5 years of
Yeah.
undergrad instead of doing it in four. But I did get two degrees while I was there. But similar paths, right? So law school, you do your undergrad, you get your degree, and then you go to either law school, medical school, whatever, postgraduate school.
Yeah.
And then I have the additional residency. But what was your bachelor's degrees? You also got a major and a minor, right? It was
No,
psychology,
I double majored.
double major.
So for me, and this'll be fun because Long and I both have kind of this secret side passion, and that's art. That's actually how we met.
Yeah.
So when I went to Texas, I applied to the business school and I applied to the art school. Business school was so competitive that
Dude,
they
I don't
like,
think I knew you applied to the art school.
yeah, yeah. I applied to the business school and the art school. Business school was so competitive that they said, "Hey, you're gonna have to reapply like next year." And then the art school did a very similar thing because I came into art really late in my high school career. So when I submitted my portfolio, they said, hey, you need a few more items in your portfolio. So spend a year adding these items that we're looking for and then reapply. And I was like, well, no, I'm not going to stay another year in college. Why would I do that? And so I then chose to go down the psychology path because I thought psychology was super, super interesting. It was something that I really enjoyed in high school.
Hmm.
So majored in psychology, and a lot of the minor classes I picked were sociology classes. And so at that point, I said, well, if I just take a few more classes of sociology, I'll get my double major and I can graduate with 2 degrees from the University of Texas. So that's what I did. That was my path.
So do you think, does your major in college play a big role in getting into law school? Do they look at exactly what you get? Are there certain courses you have to meet to qualify for an application?
Not necessarily law school. Law school is one of those places where your LSAT and your GPA, and for those of you who don't know, LSAT is like the test that you take to score to get into law school. So every law school has their like baseline LSAT requirement where you got to hit this point or you have almost no chance of getting in.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as the degrees, when you go to law school, and this might be a little bit different than medical school, so I'll ask you the same question, but in law school, they like a variety of people.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was there, we had people that were obviously psychology and sociology majors, the liberal arts. We had individuals that were from, banking and finance and business degrees. We had individuals that were, pre-med or biology majors or chemistry majors, from the sciences. So it was a wide variety of people. And Texas Wesleyan, being a smaller private law school at the time, really catered to a bunch of different people. So the unique thing there was my class wasn't just people that were coming fresh out of college. There were a lot of second and third career people there that were going to law school. I think in my class we had 2 or 3 individuals that were like over the age of like 55 or 60 that were going back to school to become lawyers. We had retired police officers. It was just the gambit of different people, which was also cool because you got to not just work with like, the people you had gone to school with for the last
Right.
4 years, but people that had families and kids and jobs and retirements
Yeah.
and they
Different
were
life perspectives, you know.
yeah, and it was just kind of wild to see that interaction. But yeah, when it comes to selection processes, at least when I was applying, it was your GPA, your LSAT, and then also looking at you as like a well-rounded individual. What were your extracurriculars? What did you do while you were in college? And whether or not you'd be a good fit for the law school.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah, it's pretty similar to medical school. I feel like the old ways of the way that they used to admit medical students was based on if you were a science major and whether or not your GPA, your MCAT score, so that was the medical exam rather than the LSAT, and if those scores were high, then you were pretty much guaranteed at least an interview. But
Yeah.
nowadays it's so much harder.
So wait, you guys got interviewed.
Oh yeah.
We
Oh, you
didn't get
did.
interviewed.
Oh yeah, so you apply. Yeah, so medical school, you have to get a bachelor's, you take your MCAT, and then you apply to as many programs as you can afford, and then they will offer an interview, and you go and interview on these panels at all these different schools, and then the schools will then tell you whether or not they are inviting you to attend, if they're waitlisting you, or you've been completely outright denied. And so, yes, there's a whole process, and you're traveling all over the country if you end up applying to medical schools across country. So, a lot of travel if you like to travel, but very costly. It's a very costly process, and it doesn't even end at medical school because then you have to do the same process again for residency. You're interviewing for those training jobs, so
Yeah.
it's kind of a unique process.
Yeah. So then let's back up a little bit. So let's go back to Texas for you. You said 5 years, 2 degrees. How
Yeah.
did that end up funneling you into med school?
Yeah, so I was always told I was going to be a doctor by my parents, dad, mom, ever since I was ever since I can remember. Doctor was kind of what I was meant to do, is what they told me. So, the first opportunity when I moved away to go to college, I was able to kind of, I guess, find and discover my hobbies and dislikes on my own. So I actually pursued art school just like you, which is why I'm surprised to hear that you applied, because I also applied to art school after getting into the College of Natural Sciences. And so obviously my major was human biology, but I wanted to pursue art just to make sure that that wasn't a career that I was interested in. So I actually applied during my third year of college, and I also did not get in. They said my portfolio sucked, and so I actually reapplied the following year, and that's when I got in, and that's why I stayed an extra fifth year to finish out that art degree. But actually, that art degree is what propelled me in my interviews, my
Mhm.
application. It made me stand out because it was such a unique pathway.
Yeah.
And I got to talk about how I wanted to integrate art into medicine. And originally I was thinking about doing medical illustration, which is a dying art, but it's kind of that art that you see on posters and books, anatomy books and things like that. But as I was going through art school, I realized too subjective. I needed something that was a little bit more concrete. This is right, this is wrong, and it wasn't so based on who was grading you. And so
Yeah.
it really defined and it really solidified that, hey, medicine was for me. And obviously, during college, I also volunteered at the hospital. I joined a whole bunch of organizations, medical organizations. So I had a lot of exposure to medicine, and I
Mhm.
realized that is what I enjoyed most. And
Yeah.
here I am. But yeah, interview process, you get in, and then you start your medical school, and it's 4 years. And law school is how many years?
So law school is 3 years, and kind of in the same, like if you take away the interview that you guys have, you get kind of the same responses. So when you apply, it's either a, hey, no, sorry, you didn't get in, or it's, hey, you've been waitlisted, but there's also another option where it's, hey, yes, you can join our law school, but you will now be in the night program. So being in the night program ends up putting you at 3.5 or 4 years.
Oh,
So instead of squeezing all, and the thing about law school is you really don't have to take any summer classes. Like
okay.
it's doable. It's a little hard, but it's doable. But most people don't want that stress, so they'll put in, maybe a few summer courses or a winter semester. I actually studied abroad during law school, so I was able to get some additional credits by traveling over to Europe. But I I had the option where I applied to four law schools, and that was Texas Wesleyan, SMU in Dallas, Baylor in Waco, and then University of Texas. And University of Texas was at the time the best law school in the entire state. Super competitive, didn't get in there. Baylor was also up there as well, and so was SMU. I mean, they're all really good law schools, but Baylor flat out said no. SMU actually offered me a night program.
Mm.
And at that point, I was like, okay, Wesleyan offered me a scholarship. SMU offered me the night program. I would rather stay in Fort Worth and do it that way. So yeah, in 3 years from beginning to end, that's all it takes. And the crazy thing, I think that this has always wowed me and interested me about med school is the fact that you guys have to do school, and then it's like you guys are still having to go through residency and learning how to do that.
Yeah.
That is something I wish law school kind of implied that we did because,
Do you though?
well,
There's
yeah,
a
because
lot of negatives about residency and how long it is and how well or not well you get paid. There's a lot of pros and cons, I guess, about residency. So not necessarily something I would advocate for
well,
in
the
law.
the reason I think that would be important is because while you're in law school, there are three different types of paths you can take. One is you take the path that allows you to pass the bar exam in your state. So if you take that path, you're taking the classes that focus on what's going to be on the exam. So for instance, you have like Texas oil and gas. That is something that you have to take because it's on, you don't have to take it, but it's on the bar exam.
Hmm.
So if you want to be
For the
knowledgeable
state
of
of
it,
Texas.
for the state of Texas,
Right.
yes. So with that, it's like, okay, well, I can try to do a crash course with my bar prep because after you graduate, you go straight into what they call bar prep because usually the bar exam in Texas is in the end of July, beginning of August, or you can take it, I think, in February. So you graduate in May and you have 2 or 3 months of studying before you take the exam. So you have to learn that whole discipline in a few days in hopes that you get it
Cramming
right,
it. Yep.
or you take the class and be more comfortable. So there's a lot of like, okay, well, I could take this class or I could not take the class knowing that it might be like this big on the exam. Or I need to take this class because I know the exam will cover it this much. So you have that path of doing bar prep while you take classes. Then you have the classes that are those that interest you. You know, what do you want to do in the future? Do you want to do something that has to do with national security law? National security law isn't on the bar, it's not required. And for the most part in Texas, if you're getting into something like that, you hope that you end up in DC. Well, for me, that was something that really interested me. So I took the class just to learn more about it. But there was no benefit towards taking the class other than it's interesting, right? And then the final thing is taking classes that actually prepare you for the practice of law. So I would take a litigation drafting, and litigation is being in the courtroom. So I thought, hey, maybe I'll be a litigator at some point. So I wanted to learn how to write up memorandum and demand letters and how to respond to discovery and evidence on paper. And then I also took a litigation trial course in which the entire class, we just prepared for a trial. And at the end of the semester, our final grade was based on us going out to the courtrooms in Dallas and actually holding a trial
That's pretty
with other,
cool.
yeah, with other lawyers watching in and being the judges. So we got to like bring witnesses in and do all that. So
Nice.
my pathway was I sprinkled a little bit of each into my career path, but there are other people that will dedicate solely to I need to pass the bar or
Sure.
I need all the work experience or I just want to take things that interest me. So when you're doing that, you can miss out on how to actually practice law
Sure.
if you're not taking the classes that are the litigation drafting or the trial courtroom classes. So that's where I go back to maybe it'd be beneficial if maybe a year of practice where it's like, this is your interest, you're going to go in, you're going to practice, you're going to learn how to actually do lawyer stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because we always joke in law school, they teach you how to think like a lawyer, they teach you how to write like a lawyer, but you don't really know how to be a lawyer until you get out. And at 26 years old, as an attorney, you're like, I could subpoena people and I can just sue people and I can like, and granted, it's far fetched, but like I could defend like criminals or I
Yeah.
could prosecute people. It's kind of a heavy weight to bear where you're like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah. Well, imagine same idea with medicine, with
Yeah.
human lives. But that is why, the process is so rigorous, and that's why you do have to do a residency because ours is a little bit more strict. Everyone is a little bit more confined to the same pathway.
Yeah.
I would say 80% of the journey. So for you, though, how where along the line do people know or expect to know what type of law they want to practice so that they can, or do they not know until they graduate and then come out and you know?
Some individuals know exactly what they want to do.
Hmm,
Some individuals know that they want to be a assistant DA, a prosecutor, an assistant district attorney in their city, and they want to prosecute, crimes. Other people know that they just want to work in oil and gas, or maybe you have a passion for immigration and you want to be an immigration lawyer. So if you know that's kind of where you want to be, you can then make that pathway a little bit easier where you understand what classes you should be taking to at least get through the bar. And then while you're in law school, you look for the internships that will get you there. There are others like me thought I knew what I wanted to do. So it was all about backup plan. So if we want to get into that, I went to law school because I wanted to join the FBI.
yeah.
I didn't really care about being a lawyer. I just looked at the pathways into the FBI. I want to be a special agent. I want to, be Batman,
Hmm.
essentially. And thought, well, being a lawyer is a great backup because some of the pathways in the FBI are you can be an accountant, you can be, you could be a CPA, you could have your law degree, you can have some liberal arts experience, but then you also have career experience on the back end, foreign language. So I was looking at all those pathways. I'm like, okay, I actually enjoy, the thought of being a lawyer. I enjoy learning about the law, and that was in college as well because, you take business law classes, or I think I took a psych in the law class.
Sure.
So I decided I wanted to join the FBI. So during law school, it was all about, okay, how can I bolster my resume to look good for the feds, but at the same time get experience where if they never came through, I wouldn't be stuck in the water. So going into my first year, and this is the other thing about law school, it's a very frustrating thing. A lot of your pathway is decided in the first year if you want to go into what they call big law. and go make hundreds of $1,000s a year right out of school. So they look at your ranking in that first year. Sometimes you don't even get an interview or you can't even apply unless you're ranked in like the top 10. And when I say top 10, I don't mean percent. I mean like the top 10 individuals in law school.
And you're talking about like grade, overall grade
Overall
with
grade.
courses, yeah.
Overall grade, right?
Yeah.
And on top of that, there are things in law school, other extracurriculars that are big and popular, like what they call law review and writing law review articles. But in that first year, you're trying to figure out law school, but also place yourself.
Right.
And for me, I was the first, and I think you might have been the same, but I was the first guy in my family to go to college.
Oh yeah.
Like,
Graduate, yeah, and even go postgraduate. Absolutely.
yeah, so
Yeah.
not
A lot of
only am I
pressure.
trying to figure out how to do college by myself, well,
Yep.
I had a supportive family, right? I had
Right.
supportive parents, but like we didn't know how to do the college thing.
Yeah.
So I definitely didn't know how to do the law school thing.
I
I
know.
didn't have my, dad or mom who was a lawyer saying, you
That's a
need to
whole
do
nother
this,
video
you
though.
need to do it.
Financial aid and getting into college and
Oh
dealing with
my
all that.
gosh.
That will be a good one. But
Yeah. So from there, it was, um, you start applying for these internships. You do an internship your first year, and you get like at least two shots. So the first year internship can go really well. And then you could say, oh, I really like this firm or this business. And so I'll come back for the second year. And at the end of the second year, they'll give you like the offer for when you graduate.
sure.
Or it doesn't work out in that first summer. And then you do it again for your second summer. And at the end of your second summer, a lot of people expect to have their offers prepared for the next year. So for a lot of people, that third year is just, I need to pass the bar. If I can pass the bar, I have my job lined up. Well, for me, I didn't know what I wanted to do. So that first year, I was fortunate enough to get an internship with American Airlines legal department. And then going in that, and that was wonderful. That was great. But I was like, okay, corporate law, I don't really know if that's what I'm going to pursue. So it was just a good experience.
Sure.
Then going into the fall, I ended up getting an internship with the Dallas DA's office. So
Awesome.
I was in the state jail felony unit for I think like 6 or 7 weeks. And I would go up there twice a week and I would just help the ADAs. And I realized really fast, I was like, I do not want to be a prosecutor. I would love to join the FBI, but I do not want to be a prosecutor,
Yeah.
especially in, Dallas, because that was just a whole other story. And then going into my second summer is when I went and studied abroad. And
Hmm.
then when I came back, I wanted some real world experience. And that's where I ended up taking what they called an externship with a local family law firm.
Hmm.
And so by starting off at the family law firm, I was able to get litigation experience, which really interested me. Litigation was super interesting. Family law, as they joke, it's sex, drugs, and rock and roll. It's just all the extremes, all the craziness that you would imagine family law to be.
Yeah.
And I actually enjoyed it. I ended up getting an offer after I graduated from the bar from that firm, and I ended up working there for on and off for about 3 years.
Yeah.
Well, in that pathway, I kind of like family law kind of found me
Yeah. Sure.
kind of wild. And yeah, that was how I got to my path. But I feel like my path was all over the place.
Yeah.
I have friends that always knew I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and I talk to them, and that's exactly what they're doing, and they've
Yeah.
dedicated the last 10 years pursuing that sector or
Sure.
that
So is it
position.
easy to pivot? Once you have done family law for a couple of years, like are you able to pivot to a different type of law or a different focus, or do you have to go back to school to learn extra court? Like,
No,
how does that work if you want to pivot? Do you
that's a
just learn
great
on the job?
question. So as a lawyer, once you're a lawyer, you're a lawyer.
Sure.
Now you can go practice whatever you want, wherever you want. There's some rules as to like if you're going to go to a different state, you have to be admitted to their bar. Sometimes it requires you taking testing. Other times you get grandfathered in. So let's say that you worked as a lawyer for 5 years. If you can show that, you are a good individual and you don't have any disciplinary actions, they'll
Hmm.
admit you to their bar,
Mm.
right? And this is another thing that we can probably save for a later conversation, but there's also like the state aspect versus the federal aspect. So federal, you can be from, whatever state you want. You be licensed in any state because it's federal government stuff. With state, you're dealing with state laws. But yeah, it's one of those things where you get to you can hang out your own shingle, what they call it. You can start your own
Hmm.
practice. You can literally jump from one thing to another. The hard part is if you identify a firm or a business and you want to get in,
Hmm.
that's where your resume is gonna start being looked at. So
Sure.
for instance, if as a family law lawyer, if I then wanted to transition into, let's say, Texas oil and gas, then I may not need to be heavy in litigation. I need to be heavy in my knowledge of contractual law and oil and gas and, what comes with land and real estate and property, and maybe be more business savvy at that point.
Hmm.
And if you could show that, like that can come through. And again, I think I don't know if this is the same as in the medical field, but it's also who you know. If your best friend works at a firm and they're a partner and you want to try to get in, you might have an easier in than applying and putting resumes out there. But I will say that the more specialized you become, the longer you stay in the field, the harder it is to get out and go elsewhere.
Got it.
No.
Got it.
Is
Yeah.
that the same with med?
No, I mean, I'm hearing a lot of differences, but also, oddly enough, a lot of similarities between the pathways. But for medical school, like I said, it's a little bit more. The curriculum is pretty much set. Most schools have to follow a set of criteria that they have to teach because when doctors come out, they have to have a baseline of knowledge, right? So your pharmacology, your pathophysiology, your anatomy, like those are things you want every doctor, whether the doctor is a psychiatrist, a pediatrician, an OBGYN, like no matter what type of physician they end up being, they always know at least the basics. And so the first 2 years you do those basic sciences is what we call it. And that is purely bookwork. Like you're literally studying 24/7, 24/7 maybe 23/7, but you are literally studying the majority of your day, the majority of your week,
No.
because there are only a few tests that you can take throughout the year to determine whether or not you pass and you move on. So it's really high stakes classes as well as high stakes exams. And then there is a big exam. It's called the USMLE for MDs. And then there's the COMLEX for DOs. And we can talk about the differences between the two types of degrees that physicians can have. You take step one is the way what we call it. And so that's the first big test. And this is everything you learn in the first 2 years, making sure that you have that knowledge, that foundation there. You take that test, you pass it, then you go into your third and your fourth year. And this is where most students are allowed to explore and decide what sort of doctor they want to be or what sort of physician they want to be. And so some people already know what they want. However, the way the curriculum is created is you are forced to go through every single specialty during those third and fourth years. There are a couple of months where there are electives so that you can kind of redo certain specialties if you're interested. But you have to go through family medicine. You have to go to pediatrics. You have to go through surgery. Like those are all aspects that you have to go through just so that you get exposure. And
Mhm.
then the end of your third year, halfway through the rotations, then now you are deciding. You are deciding what you're forever going to be, with a type of physician you're going to be for the rest of your life. So you're
Is
picking your
that
specialty.
stressful?
Oh, absolutely. Because you have no idea if, one, if you're going to get a residency spot, two, are you going to burn out, 2 or 3 years after you graduate? You have no idea. There's just so much on the line. But
Mhm.
but that's why hopefully through your electives, through your rotations, you've solidified enough. And of course you have exposures prior to medical school. You should have volunteered and worked at medical offices and just kind of get an idea of what your interests were. So you are then applying for residency, but you're also studying to take second step. So the second part of the big test, right? So USMLE, COMLEX, you now have a second test that you're taking. And through your third and your fourth year, that is the big test. But every month, every rotation, you're also taking a test for that specific specialty to make sure that you
Yeah.
have mastered it. So then you apply for residencies. Then your fourth year, you're still doing rotations. However, it's a little different for your fourth year because now you're doing what's called audition rotation. So now you're going to these hospitals that have residencies and you are auditioning yourself. You are showing your best self to these programs and you're selling yourself. You're working on the team. You're bottom of the totem pole, but you're working on the team. You're trying to make sure that you shine in the best way possible. You spend 2 to 4 weeks and then you send in your application and you hope that they offer you an interview, and then you come back, you interview, and then at the end of your fourth year you have to submit a rank list. And so I might have applied to, I don't know, 30 programs, but only interviewed at 15, doesn't mean I have to rank all 15. I only want to rank the programs that I am most interested in, that I won't dislike if I were to get in, even if it was my last choice,
Mhm.
right? So normally people rank majority of the ones that they interview it, because it is so competitive. So I interviewed, I think, at about 11 or 12, and I ended up ranking 8 or 9 programs. And I did get my first choice, but so the rank list goes in. The programs also rank their candidates that they liked. Each program can only take between 3 to 10 residents per year. So they are setting in their rank list, and then there's this magical system that computes. So it's taking the rank list from the applicant and then the rank list from the program, and they mush it together, and then somehow it throws out the best matches. And so that's called match day. So we all wait for that one day where all the program, all you get to know exactly where you're going for the next 3 to 7 years.
Mhm.
And so once you get in, you have like literally like 3 or 4 weeks to move across the country to get to where you're going to be doing residency for the next couple of years. But I always knew I was going to be family medicine, so it kind of was nice and easy, because I went through rotations, and I loved every specialty. It was hard to say no to any of them.
But didn't you want to, like, back in college, I remember us talking, you want to be an anesthesiologist.
Yeah, well, yeah. So yes, getting into medical school, I was thinking anesthesiology. They talk to people, but not too much, and the pay was really good. I thought the idea of learning pharmacology and the medicines behind anesthesia sounded great, but then I realized you really don't talk to the patients enough. Like you do pre-op stuff, you talk to them post-op, but when the patient's down, you're just monitoring their vitals and
Yeah.
making sure that they're asleep. You're not really talking to the patient and building that relationship that I was looking for. And so I pivoted. I was like, okay, I'm gonna potentially do pediatrics, but then I realized, oh, I don't want to deal with parents all day, especially parents
Not
of
the kids,
sick
it's the
kids.
parents.
Yeah, parents of sick kids. And so I pivoted, but I liked pediatrics still, and
Yeah.
so I pivoted, and I landed on family medicine. It was probably the beginning of my second year, middle of my second year. So I knew going into my third and fourth year that all of my rotations, any electives I had, was going to be family medicine. So it was pretty nice. And yeah, and that's the luxury of family medicine, is we are one of the lower paid specialties. However, we know a little bit of everything. And so I get to
Yeah.
do minor surgeries, I get to do derm stuff, I get to do OB stuff. It's really nice.
That's
But
awesome.
yeah, that's the journey of medicine. And so again, what I'm hearing is that same journeys, similar journeys, but
Right.
different. Well, what's the term? Like different perspectives on how you get to where you end up.
Yeah.
So similarly, we have 3 to 5 years of undergrad. You have to get a bachelor's degree.
Mhm.
For medical school, you actually do have to hit certain science courses. So you have to have a certain amount of chemistry, a certain amount of biology, but you don't have to be a science major. You
Mhm.
can be an English major. You just have to make sure you take those courses.
Yeah.
So that's the difference between pre-law and pre-med. But then once you get into law school and med school, you're doing your 3 to 4 years.
Mhm.
And then med school, you continue into residency. And in terms of law, you're kind of just done. And then unless you want to pivot. So it sounds like med school might be harder. Becoming a physician might be harder. I'm
I,
kidding. I'm kidding.
I know that we're saving that for another
Yeah,
conversation.
yeah,
I
yeah.
would also probably agree with that.
No, I'm kidding. I think it's hard in a different aspect,
Yeah.
different way. But yeah, I think both journeys are rigorous and hard and not
Mhm.
easy to go into. Otherwise, we have tons of physicians and ton of
Yeah.
docs, lawyers.
And that doesn't even take into account, like, and post, right? Like, in the law, you can go get additional certifications. You can
Sure.
go get your master's of law, which is an LLM. So it's like,
Mhm.
the learning can never stop if you don't want it to stop. And I also, to point out, you guys have to take the MCAT as well, right? Which is like
Yep.
your entrance exam, similar to the LSAT.
Yep.
So it's, you have that individual test that,
Yep.
hey, if you want to go to either, do well in college and do well on the testing, because that's what you're being looked
Yeah,
at.
I think applicants to law school and medical school nowadays are just so competitive. Everyone's so well-rounded. It's hard to stand out. And so
Mhm.
the one thing that would make you stand out is if your grades are not up to par. So that
Yeah.
absolutely, I agree
Mhm.
with that sentiment that you have to do well in your classes in undergrad and do well in your LSATs and MCATs to get into those schools.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah,
also find it interesting that, like, the personality, like, here we know each other, we've been best friends forever. but the personality you get to really put into your school and what you want to do. Like for you, when we really started becoming friends, you were very introverted.
Oh
And
yeah.
it's funny because, trying to puzzle it together, you're an introvert, you want to be an anesthesiologist, you get to talk to people, and then during college, you had this mass transformation where you became one of the biggest extroverts I know. And now your path is I get to talk to people every single day. I get to work with people every single day.
I
I
know.
get to be around
It's
people every single day.
crazy. It's
Yeah,
crazy. Crazy.
it's
Yeah.
along the way it goes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that this conversation is a really good one. I feel like for those individuals that don't know what they want to do in their life, they go to Reddit, they go to social media, they go to
Hmm.
YouTube, they go to their peers, and sometimes they don't get the honest opinion. Sometimes
Right.
it's a very biased opinion, and I think that I appreciate the fact that we can have an open conversation about
Right.
how, you know, you do it this way or you do it that way. But I think either path you choose, as long as you work hard, you can become very successful and really
Right.
have a very good impact on, your direct community, the people around you. And like the
Absolutely.
sky's the limit in these two fields. Like
Yep.
legitimately, you can be a surgeon that is saving lives every single day, or
Hmm.
you can be a justice on the Supreme Court. Like the limitations are
Right.
endless.
Right. Yeah. And that's what I'm excited about this podcast that we're doing here is I'm hoping to reach a lot of people, a lot of minorities or
Mhm.
people who think that they don't have a chance. And as we share more of our story, they can see that we have very humble beginnings. And,
Yes.
both of our parents didn't, they didn't have too much to their name when they came to the country. And so, yeah, I think we have so much more to tell. And hopefully, as the podcast grows and more topics come out, I'm hoping that we can just have more good conversation and have more input about what others are interested in hearing from us.
Yeah, definitely.
Mix between
So
law and medicine should be good.
next we're between law and medicine. It's gonna be great, man.
Yeah.
So with that, I guess we can call it. So it was a
That was
pleasure,
awesome.
Long. Yes, we're doctors. Yes, we're lawyers. No, this podcast is not medical or legal advice. Do not take anything we say as a reason to perform your own heart surgery, represent yourself in court, or diagnose your neighbor's rash. This is for entertainment only. Think of it like hanging out with your smartest, wittiest friends, not a substitute for an actual appointment. If you act on anything we say without talking to your own professional, that's on you. Seriously, don't do that.